Body and Dream Life interview series. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing my good friend, Katie Bressack. So, just to tell you a little bit about Katie, she is a certified health and wellness coach from the Institute for Integrative Nutrition and board certified by the American Association for Drugless Practitioners. She also has a certificate from the Institute of the Psychology of Eating. She's also been trained in the hormone cure with Dr. Sarah Gottfried and is a registered yoga instructor. And beyond that too, Katie works with corporate wellness, and she's created wellness programs for companies like Mattel, Digitus, and Publix Modem. So welcome, Katie.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, it's so good to have this conversation. And I just feel like we have these kind of conversations all the time. And so it's great to just turn on the recording and just kind of get some of this stuff out there for more women to hear, because I think it's so important. And so just to start off, let's talk about your story and how you really started rocking your dream body and your dream life by your definition.
Yeah, so I've been out in California for about 5 years now, but before I lived here, I was in New York City and not rocking my dream life whatsoever. I was in corporate America and was rocking a different type of life, but one that was not fulfilling and one that I actually got really sick doing. Had like a really chronic sinus infection for about a year. The last year I was kind of really pushing hard in my corporate career. And I went to about 10 different doctors, went to ear, nose, and throat specialist, and they wanted to give me surgery. And I was like, I am too young to go under the knife. Like, there's no reason for that. And I finally found a holistic doctor who sat with me for about an hour, which is unheard of. I mean, anytime you even go to the doctor's office, they're like pushing you out as soon as you walk in. And we just had a conversation like you and I are having right now. How do you like your job? And I was like, no, I hate it. How are your relationships? And I was just not in a really good relationship at that point in my life. She's talking to me about stress, and she's like, girl, if you're this stressed out at 28 and without kids, without a family, without marriage, like, I don't even know what's going to happen when you actually do end up doing those things, if that's something that you want. And we just kind of like talked it out. And I remember just hysterically crying because first, it was such a relief to talk to someone who I felt like was getting it and not dismissing the way that I was feeling. And also having somebody ask me questions that I was kind of avoiding. It's really easy to live your life in avoidance. And I left that day with kind of this feeling like I was in control of my health. For so long as we grow up, you're healthy, you get sick, you go to the doctor, they give you medicine, and then you live your life. It was the first time where someone had given me the power of having my health in my own hands. And she gave me a prescription for a neti pot, probiotics, yoga, and meditation. And she's like, you need to really reduce the stress in your life. And I was chronically sick my whole life, like always colds and everything, you name it, I got it. And I haven't had a sinus infection since, and I'm just turned 37 years old.
Oh my gosh. Well, first, I feel like it's such a good point that you said that it was like she understood you or she saw you. And I think that that's something that so many women can relate to, where they feel like they're just constantly in this go, go, go mode, trying to keep up, trying to take care of everybody else. But I think a lot of times, like, they don't feel seen. They don't feel understood.
Yeah. And heard, I was going to all these doctors and talking, but nobody was hearing me.
Yeah.
They were just, just giving me more medicine and not really listening. So that was, oh God, it was such a huge sense of relief. Unfortunately, she retired like a month later, but she changed my life.
Well, you know what? That's the gift that keeps on giving, because now look what you get to do. And you're doing the same thing for other women.
Exactly.
So if you were to start, just by giving some basic beginning tips for a woman who has that kind of schedule, like that's super crazed, go, go, go. It's like from work to home, everything. How does she start making those changes that will help her to start to unravel the stresses that she has right now in her life?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing, honestly, is really asking yourself why, or like, how do you want to feel? You know, if you start making changes just to make them, you're really not probably going to do that. So it's really digging deep and asking yourself, how do I want to feel differently? Why? And like, how does that look? And then it's easier to kind of shape what needs to kind of be in place next. But I think overall, the biggest thing that I see with my clients is this eagerness of saying yes to everything. People pleasing, I feel like as women, that's just something that we've been doing our whole lives and not even sure that that's what's going on. So many of the women I talk to, they're like, I have no time for myself. Yeah. And then we look at the week, and every single night they're out doing something that they don't want to do. You know, whether or not it's meeting up with a friend or a work meeting, you know, it's just, they're so busy living their life that they're not actually living their own life.
Yeah. It's like they don't take time to be like, wait, is this really actually bringing me joy? Or am I just doing it because I feel obligated? Like I told somebody I would, or somebody expects me to. And that comes.
Yeah. And I think,
go ahead.
Sorry. No, I was going to say too, I think it's like, we've been taught once you say yes, you can't say no.
Yeah.
And I would so much rather have somebody say, Katie, you know, I really would love to see you, but I'm just not going to make it tonight. Or I'm just tired, or I just need some alone time, rather than someone forcing themselves to kind of drive to see me. And I think we all have an understanding of that, but we all kind of feel bad when we say no.
Yeah. And it's almost like it's that permission to just go with what feels right. And the more we can do that for our friends too, it's like it gives them that off the hook. Like, I'm not going to be mad at you if I think we've even done that to each other. Like where,
totally.
Where it's like right now I just need some time, or I can't today, but let's reschedule. And that's okay. Like it's not something that anybody really gets upset over, especially when they too know the value in taking really good care of yourself.
Exactly. And I think it's just one of the things that takes time to practice. So I always tell my clients, I'm like, if you are so uncomfortable saying no, start saying no in the mirror, like talk it out, let it move through the body, be comfortable with it. Because I think so often, if you've been saying yes for so long, even that word just feels like it can't like come out of your body almost.
And I also think that a lot of times we think we have to have this like big explanation, but no is a complete sentence. So it's not necessary that you're going to be like, no, and then walk away, but you just like, no, like that doesn't work for me today, or no, you know what, I'm not going to be able to make it, period. Like you don't have to make all of these long excuses to like validate it. Like it's okay to just not be feeling like doing that thing because you need to have that time to like fill your own cup in a different way.
Yeah, no, totally agree. Yeah.
So how do you work with your clients to start plugging in some more like self-care, you know, when they have a full schedule already and they're like, okay, I'm starting to realize this is how I want to feel. You know, I recommend the desire map. My clients that go through my immersion program, they read the desire map, and that's where you start to really develop like, what are my core desired feelings? So now they know that. How do you plug that in?
I think it's really looking at like what's going to fit into their lifestyle. So if they really only they're going from the time they wake up till the time they go to bed, it's really just starting with finding like 5 minutes for themselves. I'm a big believer in waking up a little bit earlier than everybody else. Not saying you have to be up an hour, 2 hours, but if you can be the first one up in the morning and just go and sit, and all you need to do is just breathe and just start your day not feeling like you're rushed, that really does change everything about the rest of your day. It keeps the stress levels down. It keeps your mind focused. And when you're having one of those moments where you feel like you haven't really done anything for yourself, you can kind of smile like, no, I did this morning. I had like those 5 minutes to myself. Yeah. I think a lot of us think self-care has to be this huge grand thing, and it's beautiful when we have massages and do things like that, and I encourage that. But on a day-to-day basis, you can do things on a smaller scale that still feel just as good.
Yeah. And breathing, that is such a great way. Like you can do it obviously anywhere because you already do, but by being conscious about it and just filling your lungs up and feeling it, you know, complete, like these deep breaths that we're not used to, that can really reset your entire nervous system.
Oh, exactly. And I think, I mean, if you look at people, especially when you're driving, you just see everybody like so tense and they're holding their breath in. Like everyone has like red faces all the time. Yeah, I mean, I breathe a lot when I drive because I'm just not a huge lover of driving, but I just breathe it out.
Yeah.
It changes my reactions so much to everything in my life.
It's funny, whenever I start talking about breathing, it makes me breathe deeper because I'm like, yeah,
Totally.
all right, I need to do
Yeah,
that.
and like your whole body, your shoulders relax, like everything just
Mhm.
kind of calms down a little bit.
And you can even like visualize breathing the stress out. Like sometimes one of the exercises I do or have my clients do is like imagine sort of like breathing all of the stress into like a ball and then releasing it in your out breath. And it's like those mental exercises like that really do help to reduce stress.
Yeah, they really do. And I think we kind of, even when I was told to do meditation many years ago, I was kind of like, what's that going to do? Right. But it really is the connecting to our body that really helps us figure out what's missing and what we need to kind of fill it up with.
Yeah. And so I know you had the certification with the Institute for the Psychology of Eating. And one of the things, I love Mark David, like the book, The Slow Down Diet was huge for me. That was actually the book, like for me, that was the game changer that got me thinking differently. And so what would you say would be like your biggest takeaway from your training there, or, just in terms of like stress and hormones and how it all affects the body and how it's all interrelated?
Yeah, I mean, I think, just the fact that stress is the number one reason why most of us just don't feel good. And so much of that are like a lot of the stories that have been playing over and over again in our body and our mind that do need some time to have some love approach to that. So much of the things that we're stressed about aren't even about like our day to day. It's something that someone said to us a year ago about something we were wearing or our body or something. But our body holds in like and stores like all of these messages, and it's so important to kind of like let them go. But I feel like it goes back to the idea of stress and what is actually causing you the stress. Like, is it being a recovering perfectionist, which I've been kind of in recovery for years?
Me
Is
too.
it a relationship? Yeah, like figuring out like what is it? Like, well, whenever my husband and I get into like a little snippy fight, I'm like, okay, Katie, what's actually bothering you? Like, it has nothing, like it's really usually not what's going on currently, but it's really kind of digging a little deep and allowing yourself to be vulnerable and to be okay kind of sharing, whether that's in just writing in a journal or talking it out with your partner.
Yeah. And when it comes to, like you said, carrying around all of this stress, I think a lot of times people don't realize when you start to dive into that stuff, our weight can be a way that we hide, and we carry that stress around as physical weight. And once we start to release
Totally.
that shit, like once we release that baggage, then that's where the weight starts to come off, because our body is freed up to be able to work like that well-oiled machine that it is without all of that stress.
Yeah. And so much too with like body pain, lower back issues, or, someone I was talking to a few weeks ago was saying that they were having like a pain in their side for years that was associated with stress. It was, doctor after doctor. And then as soon as she kind of got her stress down, it went away.
Yeah. Let's talk about like the specifics, because I know a lot of this is like, for some people it's like, well, that's kind of woo woo. Yeah, I get it. Stress release. But like, let's talk about specifically like digestion and hormones. Like, what are the effects that stress has on these things in the body?
Yeah. So especially with hormones, I mean, stress, when we're stressed out, our body pumps out cortisol to kind of help calm our body down. But that works in theory when we're not under constant stress. Mm-hmm. But if you even were to ask somebody, how are your stress levels today? And they're like, I'm at like a 3 or 4. It's probably more like a 6 or 7. because we're just so used
Yeah.
to living in stress that we
It's
don't even know
normal.
that we're stressed out.
Yeah. And it's celebrated. Like I've talked about this in a couple of other interviews. It's almost like it's a badge of honor. Like the more stress you have, the more important you are because you've
Yeah.
got stuff to do, and it's like that celebration doesn't really help because it just keeps you on that like hamster wheel of stress.
No, definitely. And like the more that you're celebrating that and the more that your body's like going through and just being on this high alert with stress, that's when your sugar cravings get so crazy that you're just like, you can eat all this sugar and still need more. This is when like your digestion, for years, I thought I was lactose intolerant. And if you were to ask my cousin Brian, he would just die laughing because we would go and hang out and I'm like, oh my God, I have to leave. And I would like run home because I had like horrible stomach issues and I thought it was from the cheese I was eating.
Yeah.
Come to find out, as soon as I like left my really intense corporate job and a boss that was kind of, I call him Dr. Evil, and really started healing my body, I can eat cheese and not need to like run home anymore. But a lot of the different health things that we feel are not because of the food necessarily, but the way that our body's metabolizing the food because of the stress. And hormones are so related, especially with women. I mean, everything that goes on in our body is hormonally charged.
Yeah, our hormones are so much more sensitive than men's. So like they're affected by stress, lack of sleep, all of that stuff. It really shows up physically.
Yeah. And all of us manifest it differently. And I think that's why it's so important to do the deep breathing and actually notice how your body feels without all of the stress, And the thing is too, it's not that we're never going to have stress in our lives. Like that's just not realistic. It's more about coping better with what's coming at us rather than reacting. Like so many people I see are just constantly reacting to things. And that's just not fun. That's just, I've been there. It's just not a good place to be.
Yeah. So when you work with your clients, do you focus mostly on health and like regaining energy and sleep patterns and so forth? Or do you work with them on like weight loss and things like that too?
I work on them with all of that. I mean, everybody kind of comes to me for a few specific reasons, whether it's weight loss or sugar cravings. But the deeper part of it too is why is your body holding on to the weight? Why do you think your digestion is off? So it's kind of a lot of health and nutrition, but also a deeper kind of life psychology part too.
That's where I was kind of going. So when you work with them, do you find that once you start to work on the health stuff, the weight loss kind of comes as the after effect?
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like when you start wearing clothes that feel good on your body, when you start like honoring your body and start speaking nicer to your body really starts responding. A lot of, there you have to make a little shifts and changes on terms of what you might be eating, but at the same time, like changing the thoughts, they're so powerful. They really are, and we kind of. A lot of my clients think it's really woo-woo of me to even mention that. And then when we start kind of working on that together and the way that their body responds, especially if you've been dieting for so many years and just kind of not having a relationship with your body, the thoughts, it's so important to kind of have those thoughts reflect the way that you really want to feel rather than the way that you might be feeling right now.
Yeah. And that's like such a new way of thinking for most people. Like you said, they think, well, this is woo woo or this is just, okay, fine. It's about your mindset. But really like once you start to really get how that affects your physical body and like your emotions really do have that effect on your central nervous system and everything else, there really is that science behind it that when you experience it, you're like, oh, I get it. You know, it's almost like magic, but it's not magic because it makes sense once you start to experience it. But in the
Totally.
beginning, yeah, like in the beginning, it's just so foreign to most people that they're like, how can that actually work?
Yeah, because I mean, we haven't actually stepped into our bodies for so long. You
Yeah.
know, it's like we've been listening to what everyone else is saying, South Beach diet, Atkins, like, you know, growing up, the no fat, low fat, like it's, you're kind of just listening to everybody else without actually seeing how your body feels and what you actually need. And that's kind of where I started healing my own body. It was like, okay, what does my body actually need versus what is everyone else telling me in terms of marketing wise, I guess, like what it needs.
Yeah. It's so true. Yeah. And then you realize, like, once you start tuning in, like, I feel like that's the theme as I keep doing these interviews. And I didn't really have like a specific thing that I was going for, like, besides obviously rocking your dream body and your dream life. And like, let's look for some very tangible tips on how to do that. But the theme that's coming through, it's so interesting, is this theme of really learning how to tap into the intuition from within and guiding yourself, even when you don't know how it's all going to play out, but you know that next step. And then that next step gives you the clarity for the next step. And I think that that's such a courageous path to travel, but it's so rewarding once you give yourself that permission.
Definitely. And it feels so much better. I mean, it just, your body, like, it really does. I've seen it so many times with my clients, like relaxing their body, and the weight goes away and the digestion improves, and their blood work is better too. If they're doing blood work in terms of hormone things, everything is part of this relaxing. And honestly, that's probably one of the hardest parts with most of my clients, is just getting to the point where it feels relaxing rather than like a chore to relax.
Yeah. And understanding too, like, how another part of the conversation that seems to be popping up is this idea of the masculine, feminine energies and how to either balance it or use them effectively. Is that something that you work with your clients on as well, especially with this fast-paced world, the corporate world?
Totally. And I think it's hard when you're in corporate. I mean, I feel like it's such a hard thing to figure out how to be feminine in a masculine environment, because all of the women that you're working with too, they're all in this masculine energy. And when we have feelings at work and, you know, we just look like we're being a little crazy, but I think it's one of those things where it comes with feeling so confident and empowered in your body. And you feel really good, and you're more apt to be able to feel more comfortable not following kind of the norm a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I was in corporate for a long time in New York, and even if you walk in one day, you're having like the best day ever. When you go and everyone's having a bad day, the energy, your whole body just feels it. So I think it's so important for women in corporate to leave the office every single day.
And get outside.
Go outside, sit in the sun, like regroup, get that energy back. And I think that's a really slow, important way to keep that feminine in the workplace.
Yeah. You know what I thought? So this is something that just popped into my head a couple weeks ago. It's so interesting that in the corporate world, like for the longest time, people wore shoulder pads. Women wore shoulder pads. It's almost like they were trying to like look more masculine because you know, they're like trying to be like a man, and it's like it doesn't have to be that way. But
well, that was like in the 80s. That's when it became really popular, because so many women were going into the corporate, and they were like, in order to feel like they couldn't match, they wore the others, and they're so ugly.
I know. I don't know why I thought of that, but it's so true. And like, even as an entrepreneur, like I mean, I've never really talked about this totally openly, especially like in an interview series or setup like this, but like I struggled so much with learning how to balance my own masculine and feminine, because I was like trying to really push hard for the longest time, like building a company, you know, being CEOs. It was tough. And I noticed that my hormones and things like that really were out of whack until I started listening to my body, listening to what I really wanted in life, and started making those shifts. And then my cycle and my hormones like self-regulated. And it just, it's funny, your body again is like showing you signals all day long, and a lot of times we don't recognize what those signals are trying to tell us.
Yeah, I had a similar experience too. I mean, about 2 years ago, I was having like some hormone issues, and I was like, what is going on? I feel like I'm doing everything I'm supposed to in terms of like health and wellness. And then I realized that I was being so aggressive in that masculine energy during the day, like do, crossing off the list. And then my husband would come home from work, and it was like we weren't even connecting because I was like being masculine at 7:00 at night when we were having dinner and being super aggressive. It's like, it's hard to turn off once you get started in that masculine energy.
Yes, it's so true. And I think that's so common for women too, like having that balance. And two books that really helped me with that were The Way of the Superior Man, and understanding like how when we get into our masculine like too far, especially within our relationship, it flips the balance. And then the man becomes more feminine, and then he doesn't feel connected to himself because he doesn't, he feels like he's not providing. And then it's like totally just get farther and farther off. And then the other book I just recently read was called The Queen's Code. That was awesome.
Oh yeah, you were telling me about that.
Yeah, so good. Same thing. Like it just teaches you so much. Yeah.
So no, but it's something to be careful about in terms of even the relationship with yourself, because when you're being so masculine all the time, your hormones do change, but your attitude changes too, and your relationships shift in a way that probably don't feel as enjoyable and comfortable too.
Yeah. It's like women feel so good nurturing. And I think there's a difference between nurturing and people pleasing. Like people pleasing is doing it out of like a need to be accepted, but nurturing is doing it from a place of generosity. And I feel like that's where we're most in that relaxed mode of receiving and nourishing ourselves and just being in that full joy, versus I think there are times when masculine energy is beneficial, obviously, but not all the time.
Yeah. And I think that's the problem that we're having right now, is that we are in that masculine energy all the time. And then the stress of it is causing our hormones and just causing our health to kind of really be affected by that.
Yeah, things like adrenal fatigue or not being able to sleep well, or digestive issues. Like these are all those signals from your body that people sort of just think like, I don't know, it's just something that's happening. But really it's your body trying to let you know like, hey, pay attention. And it's almost like the signals start out small and then they just get bigger and bigger and bigger until you not suddenly, but over time have no other choice but to pay attention.
Yeah. And unfortunately, most people don't pay attention until something happens.
Yeah. Big.
Yeah. Yeah. And that just takes a little bit longer because you've gotten so far out of balance in your body.
Yeah. And that's where you have to give yourself that time to get back in balance. So it's not an overnight process. It's not something that can happen in 3 weeks or, even a month. I mean, depending on how far out of balance you are, it's like giving that permission and time to treat this as a journey of self-discovery is so much more beneficial, I think, than what we're, again, that like immediate gratification type of a thing that we think, well, give me a pill or tell me how to do it right now.
Well, have you been reading about The Biggest Loser, the woman who, it's been in the news, gained all the weight back?
Yeah,
it was that, again, that weight loss is so aggressive. Mm-hmm. It's like they're yelling at you, you're restricting yourself, like you're going through this, and your body, like emotionally and spiritually, can't really catch up with that. And, it's like the slow weight loss and the slow process of getting back in touch with your body. Yeah, I mean, I feel like some people are just frustrated by the length of it, but in the long term, I mean, that's just so much more beneficial. And then you don't have to go back. Like this poor woman, like now she's starting from scratch again. Like it has to be heartbreaking.
Yeah, like physically, because your body just is in that stress mode because you're losing weight so fast. You're probably losing a lot of muscle. And also emotionally, you have to grow to become that person that can handle it. It's like lotto winners, it's like, what are the statistics about people who win the lotto that end up back at the exact same spot or worse? Yeah. So it's like, that's such an important part of the process to be able to maintain it once you get there. That sustainability, that slow and steady wins the race is really true.
It really is true. And it's really, I read something like, I can't remember. It was like slow weight loss is the greatest loss or something like that.
Yeah. And you learn so much about yourself and your preferences and everything else just by treating it as that journey of self-discovery, I think is the best way to look at it.
No, definitely. But I think it's just so interesting that like, even with women's health, right, and women's nutrition and everything, it's still coming from that masculine place. And I think that's why it's so important for us to be really learning how to stay more feminine, because it is a journey, and then really helping other women understand the importance of understanding what their body needs from a feminine way instead of just that masculine restriction diet, which, just doesn't work.
And knowing too, like I am fully open about the fact that I believe I am a work in progress and always will be, because I always want to continue to better myself. So it's not like there's this finish line, or I'm never one to say like, I figured it all out and I have all of the answers, because there's always more. Like you're always going to have more to learn. There's always opportunity to expand more. And so I think if we all sort of know that like every single one of us is on this journey that's our own, with our own desires, then it's not like we're trying to measure up anymore, because we're all, shoulder to shoulder in this together, really.
Yep. No, I love that. And I think it's so important to not, like, I feel like that's why I call myself a recovering perfectionist. It's like, I'm just in this too. Like there's things that will sometimes just like throw me over the edge, and I'm like, oh, whoa, like yesterday that was fine. And in terms of just like dieting, I was a vegetarian for a really long time, and I started having to eat meat again last year, and I feel so much better. And I remember like starting to post on Instagram. My friend was like, oh my God, I thought you were in this with me. I'm like, no, like I don't feel good anymore. Like I'm changing it up. But I started being a vegetarian because the way I was eating wasn't feeling good. So it's like constantly re-listening to my body and what feels good in that moment. Instead of, I don't ever want to label myself a way to eat. I think that's also become kind of hard these days. I feel like people who are vegans, like I have a few friends that are vegans that started eating meat again, but don't tell anybody because they don't want people to think that they aren't vegan. I'm just like, who cares? Just eat what feels good.
Yeah.
The labels are just so, that's another layer of nutrition and wellness that seems a little silly to me.
Yeah. Like strict rules. I'm like I like all inclusive, and whatever works for you today, and however you can support yourself and making it very, very easy and sustainable. That's the name of the game. Like throw the rules out the window and create your own based on what you want right now and what feels best to you today. And that's really it. It's like, it's basic, but it's simple, but it's not easy in the sense that you just have to like literally unlearn a lot and like reprogram yourself back to like, I don't have to feel guilty, like judgment, shame, all that stuff is not serving me. It's really about nourishing myself today and doing what I need to do today to take care of myself.
Yeah, no, I really like that.
Yeah. Well, this is awesome. And I feel like, again, we could talk all day and like, just kind of carry the little computer around, get some coffee and everything else and just keep talking like like we usually do together. But I want to give people a way to follow up with you, and if they want to take this further or learn more about you. And I know you have a special gift that you're going to offer. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So I'm gifting all of you today. It's a little guidebook, like 5 simple, quick and easy things that you can do today to just restarting balancing your hormones. And then there's a book that goes along with it, 3 of my favorite recipes, desserts included, that kind of just really help balance your body in terms of hormones and just like it's a lot of eating healthy fats and real chocolate and a lot of yummy things that can help. Because honestly, especially with our hormones, like starting really small and really working that way is the best way to get yourself feeling balanced again.
Yeah, awesome. And so we'll provide the link below for that, below the interview. So thank you again so much. I really appreciate it. And this is great. I think people are going to get a lot from this, and hopefully, above all, give themselves permission to just not make it stressful, to release the stress.
Yeah, please. Even if it's only 5 minutes, like that 5 minutes is so important.
Yeah.
We can all find 5 minutes. I think that's why I like that number.
Yeah, me too. All right, Katie, take care, and I will see everyone else in the next interview. Bye, everyone.